Observe the man whose world has systematically collapsed. The market turned, erasing his fortune. His allies, once vocal in their support, have fallen silent and retreated into the shadows. The very ground he built his life upon has fractured. Yet he stands amidst the ruins, not with the manic grin of a fool unaware of his own demise, but with an unnerving stillness, a profound calm that seems to absorb the chaos around him. He is a silent statue in a raging storm. What allows one man to be shattered by a gentle breeze, while another stands resolute in a hurricane? The answer is a paradox, a secret whispered in the courts of emperors and on the fields of ancient battles. If you desire a peace that cannot be broken, you must first prepare for a war that may never come. This fundamental truth is an alien concept to the modern mind, which has been conditioned to seek comfort above all else. The conventional path to peace is a journey of avoidance, a life built upon the fragile architecture of hope. The common man constructs his reality on the assumption of tranquility. He navigates his existence with a blind faith that the seas will remain calm, that the winds will stay favorable. His strategy is not a strategy at all, but a passive wish cast into the void. He profoundly mistakes the temporary absence of turmoil for genuine, lasting security. This is the cardinal error, the foundational weakness upon which a life of quiet desperation is built. He lives in a perpetual state of reaction, a rudderless ship celebrating the days of placid water, utterly unequipped for the inevitable squall. When adversity, that great and impartial force of nature, finally makes its move, his meticulously crafted illusion of safety disintegrates. A sudden financial downturn is not a challenge to be navigated. It is a personal apocalypse. An unforeseen health issue is not a battle to be fought. It is perceived as a cruel verdict from an unjust universe. A career path that veers unexpectedly is not an opportunity to pivot. It is the end of his identity. In these moments of intense pressure, his hope is revealed for what it always was. A shield made of spun glass, beautiful in the sun and useless in the fight. He becomes a casualty of circumstance, not because fate is malicious, but because he abdicated his own role as a guardian of his fate. He outsourced his serenity to the whims of the world, and the world, in its indifference, will always collect its due. His craving for immediate ease made him brittle, and his steadfast evasion of conflict ensured his complete and total defeat before the first shot was ever fired. This is the path trodden by the masses, a life spent walking a tightrope while actively denying the existence of the chasm below. The peace they experience is not peace at all. It is merely a temporary ceasefire with an adversary that is eternally and silently gathering its strength for the next offensive. The strategist, however, walks a path of profound and deliberate opposition to this mindset. He does not see the world through a lens of optimistic delusion. He sees it with the clear, cold eyes of a realist. He understands that chaos is not a rare anomaly, but the underlying state of the universe. He knows that entropy, decay, and disruption are not possibilities, but certainties woven into the very fabric of existence. Armed with this unvarnished truth, he seeks a different quality of peace, a peace that is not a lucky discovery, but a deliberate creation. He turns to the ageless wisdom of Sun Tzu, the master strategist, who revealed a core principle of power. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. In the grand theater of your own life, the enemy is not a rival army with banners and spears. The enemy is the formless specter of misfortune. It is market volatility. It is the insidious decay of the unprepared body and mind. It is the crushing weight of the unexpected. The strategist subdues this spectral enemy, not by engaging it in a desperate, panicked struggle when it breaches his gates, but by designing and constructing a fortress of preparedness so absolute, so meticulously planned, that the enemy's siege becomes a futile and irrelevant gesture. The strategist's peace is an internal citadel, engineered and built, stone by heavy stone, through the silent, unseen labor of disciplined foresight. While the common man is on his knees praying for the deluge to end, the strategist is calmly steering the ark he built when the sun was shining. While the unprepared are shocked by the arrival of winter, the strategist is drawing from the provisions he methodically gathered during the autumn harvest. His composure in the crucible of crisis is not the product of detachment or ignorance. It is the quiet, unshakable confidence of a grandmaster who has studied the board, anticipated every conceivable move, and positioned his pieces for victory long before his opponent even recognized the game was being played. The war he prepares for is not one of violence and aggression, but of resilience, adaptability, and foresight. It is a silent, internal war waged and won in the countless mundane choices of daily life. The portion of income consistently allocated to a reserve instead of fleeting gratification. The hour dedicated to the acquisition of a difficult new skill over the allure of passive entertainment. The unwavering commitment to physical and mental fortitude when it is far easier to surrender to complacency. Every single act of conscious preparation is a strategic strike against the potential chaos of the future. This is the great and powerful secret. The decisive battle is always won during the quiet, unremarkable days of peace. True, unassailable tranquility is not found in the absence of storms. It is forged in the tireless, deliberate construction of a vessel strong enough to sail through them with its compass true and its hull intact. For true peace is not a gift handed down by fortune, but a fortress you must build yourself, stone by deliberate stone. Comment, "I forge my peace" to internalize this principle, and subscribe to learn how to build your defenses. To embrace the philosophy of the strategist is to move beyond mere intention and into the realm of mechanics. The fortress of personal peace is not built with vague hopes, but with the unyielding principles of invisible warfare, applied with precision to the landscape of your own life. These are the pillars that support the entire structure of resilience. To master them is to transform yourself from a passive observer of your fate into its silent, deliberate architect. The first and most critical of these pillars is knowledge, for as the master Sun Tzu declared, "Know the enemy and know yourself. In 100 battles, you will never be in peril." This ancient directive is the very bedrock of all strategy. But in our modern context, who is this enemy? It is not a rival with a face and a name. The enemy is a trinity of abstract but immensely powerful forces. The first is volatility, the inherent unpredictable nature of the systems that govern our world, the violent swings of the economy, the sudden shifts in professional landscapes, the caprice of fortune itself. The second is entropy, the universal law that all systems left unattended will degrade into chaos. This applies to your health, your skills, your relationships, and your discipline. The third is ignorance, the fog of the unknown, and more dangerously, the refusal to look at what is known but unpleasant. These three forces are perpetually marching on your position. To know the enemy, therefore, is to become a master observer of these forces. It means you study the patterns of the market, not to foolishly predict its next move, but to respect its capacity for destruction and plan accordingly. It means you acknowledge the subtle, creeping decay of time on your body and your mind, treating health not as a given, but as a state that requires constant, vigilant maintenance. It means you actively seek to illuminate your own blind spots, to understand the technological and cultural currents that could render your current abilities obsolete. But this is only half of the equation. Know yourself is the more difficult and more crucial component. This is not the gentle introspection of popular psychology. This is a brutal and unflinching self-audit, an intelligence report on your own strengths, weaknesses, assets, and liabilities. You must map your own internal terrain with the dispassionate eye of a cartographer. Where are your financial vulnerabilities? Is your income dependent on a single precarious source? Is your debt a chain around your ankle or a tool you command? What are your psychological triggers? Do you react with fear when faced with uncertainty, or with anger when your ego is challenged? What are the true limits of your discipline? This self-knowledge is power in its purest form. It allows you to see exactly where your defenses are weakest. The strategist does not lie to himself about his own frailties. He studies them, respects them, and builds his strategy around them, turning potential weaknesses into well-guarded, unassailable positions. The second great principle is the mastery of terrain. Sun Tzu taught, "The skillful fighter puts himself into a position which makes defeat impossible." This is the practical application of knowledge. Once you have the map of reality and the honest assessment of your own forces, you must begin to actively shape the battlefield of your life to create a strategic advantage. The terrain is the structure of your daily existence, your habits, your systems, your environment. The unprepared person lives on a terrain shaped by others, by advertisers, by employers, by cultural pressures. He is fighting on unfavorable ground, always reacting, always at a disadvantage. The strategist, however, becomes an engineer of his own environment. He fortifies his position relentlessly, not when the attack is imminent, but long before the threat is even visible on the horizon. In the financial realm, this means creating an architecture of automatic wealth defense. An emergency fund is not merely a savings account, it is a fortified financial redoubt, a citadel provisioned to withstand a prolonged siege without requiring you to make panicked decisions under fire. Diversifying your income streams is the strategic equivalent of establishing multiple independent supply lines, ensuring that if one is cut off, your army does not starve. Automating your investments and savings is the act of digging trenches and building ramparts in times of peace, a system that functions and protects you even when your attention is directed elsewhere. This principle of shaping the terrain extends to every facet of life. In the war for your health and vitality, the terrain is your immediate environment. The strategist does not rely on the fiction of infinite willpower to resist temptation. He eliminates the temptation from his proximity. He purges his home of the processed, nutrient-poor foods that would weaken his physical vessel, thereby making the healthy choice the easy choice. He designs a daily routine that prioritizes sleep, not as a luxury, but as the critical process of repairing and restoring his command center, his mind. He creates a system for consistent physical exercise, making it a non-negotiable part of his operational calendar. He does not wait for the motivation to feel like fighting. He has engineered the battlefield so that the path of victory is the path of least resistance. In your professional life, the terrain is your network and your skill stack. The strategist cultivates deep, authentic relationships, not as a form of transactional networking, but as the establishment of trusted alliances and secure communication lines. He builds systems for his work, templates, processes, documented workflows that act as paved military roads, allowing for the rapid, efficient, and consistent deployment of his energy. He is not simply working in his profession. He is working on the very structure of his career, building a landscape that is resilient to shocks, adaptable to change, and inherently biased in his favor. Knowledge provides the intelligence, the blueprint for action, but it is the deliberate, methodical shaping of your life's terrain that builds the unassailable fortress from which you can face any storm, not with fear, but with the quiet, profound calm of a commander who knows he has already secured the high ground. The external world, with its chaos and volatility, is but a reflection of a far more tempestuous arena, the landscape of the human mind. The principles of knowledge and terrain shaping provide the blueprint and the fortifications for your life, but the most decisive battles are not fought with resources or systems. They are waged and won in the silent, invisible theater of your own consciousness. This is the domain where true power is forged. For the strategist understands a truth that eludes the common man. Before you can ever hope to command the perceptions of others, you must first achieve absolute dominion over the impulses that rage within yourself. This is the great internal war. Every human being is born with a host of potent, treacherous advisors in their inner council. Anger, a berserker who screams for immediate, destructive action, burning your own ships for the fleeting warmth of revenge. Pride, a courtier who paints a distorted, flattering portrait of your own abilities, whispering that you are invincible and causing you to underestimate every threat. Impatience, a reckless scout who sprints ahead of the main army, stumbling into ambushes and exhausting your reserves on trivial skirmishes. Fear, a saboteur who magnifies every shadow into a monster and counsels retreat before the battle has even begun. The unprepared individual is a slave to this counsel. His decisions are not his own. They are the chaotic decrees of his unchecked emotions. He reacts to slights with indignant rage, exposing his vulnerabilities. He makes ruinous decisions based on ego, ignoring critical intelligence. He abandons sound strategy for the allure of a shortcut, only to find himself lost and surrounded. The first and most vital victory, therefore, is a conquest of the self. The strategist's primary discipline is the cultivation of a profound and unshakable equanimity. He learns to observe these inner advisors not as masters to be obeyed, but as raw data to be analyzed. He feels the surge of anger, but does not act upon it. Instead, he interrogates it, understanding its source and recognizing it as a signal, not a command. He acknowledges the whisper of pride, but tempers it with a brutal, objective assessment of the facts. He transforms the frantic energy of impatience into a state of heightened readiness, a coiled spring held in perfect tension, waiting for the precise, optimal moment to be released. This internal mastery is not a state of emotionless coldness, it is a state of supreme clarity. It is the creation of an inner citadel, a command center deep within the mind, with walls so thick that the cacophony of emotional turmoil cannot penetrate them. From this serene fortress, the strategist can observe the battlefield of life with a clear and untroubled gaze, making decisions based on logic, opportunity, and long-term advantage, entirely insulated from the blinding fog of impulsive reaction. This is a peace so profound it becomes a weapon, a stillness so absolute it radiates power. Your opponents, who are themselves slaves to their passions, will be unable to comprehend your composure. They will try to provoke you, to anger you, to make you act rashly, and they will find their efforts breaking like waves against a stone cliff. Your refusal to be drawn into their emotional games is, in itself, a form of invisible warfare, draining their energy and magnifying their own frustration until they make the critical error you have been patiently awaiting. Once this internal dominion is established, the strategist turns his attention outward, to the deliberate shaping of how he is perceived by the world. This is not a matter of vanity or a desire to be liked. It is the sophisticated art of controlling the narrative, of authoring the story that others tell about you. Sun Tzu's timeless principle, all warfare is based on deception, finds its highest expression here. The master strategist understands that the world does not react to who you are, but to who they believe you are. And that belief is a canvas upon which you can paint. The goal is not to be an open book. The goal is to be a text written in a language that only you can fully decipher, while presenting a cover that serves your strategic purpose. You learn to appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. When methodically building your resources and planning a significant move, you project an aura of harmlessness and quietude. You allow others to underestimate you, for an underestimated opponent is never seen as a threat and is therefore never guarded against. Their condescension becomes a cloak of invisibility for your own preparations. Conversely, in moments of uncertainty or vulnerability, you project an unshakable confidence, a mask of serene capability. This projection acts as a deterrent, causing potential rivals to hesitate, to second-guess their own advantages, believing your position to be far more secure than it truly is. This manipulation of perception culminates in the construction of your reputation. Your reputation is not a passive byproduct of your existence. It is the most powerful psychological weapon in your arsenal. It is the shadow that enters a room long before you do, preconditioning every interaction, biasing every judgment, and shaping every decision made in relation to you. Every action you take, no matter how small, is a stone laid in the foundation of this monument. The consistency of your composure under pressure, the precision of your words, the promises you keep, and just as importantly, the threats you never have to make. All of it is recorded in the collective consciousness of those around you. Over time, you build a reputation not for aggression or for overt displays of power, but for something far more potent, calculated depth. You become known as a person of immense calm, whose actions are deliberate and whose consequences are always far-reaching. People learn that your silence is not emptiness, but observation. They learn that your patience is not weakness, but the gathering of strength. This reputation becomes a passive, self-perpetuating force field. Opportunities will flow toward you because you are perceived as a stable and capable force. Threats will divert their path, not out of fear of a single action, but out of a deep-seated uncertainty about what you are truly capable of. They will fear the response they cannot predict. This is the ultimate expression of strategic mastery, to create a reality where your influence is so pervasive and your capabilities so respected that overt conflict becomes unnecessary. Your reputation fights your battles for you, securing your peace long before any challenge is ever issued. You have journeyed through the foundational disciplines of the strategist's art. You have learned to become a cartographer of chaos, mapping the treacherous terrain of reality. You have turned your gaze inward, conducting an unflinching audit of your own psychological fortress and mastering the subtle energies of perception. You have forged a will of iron within the silent crucible of self-discipline, transforming abstract philosophy into tangible readiness. These are the profound arts of the invisible war, the meticulous preparations conducted in the quietude that precedes the inevitable storm. Now, as we stand at the precipice of the final revelation, we must address how this immense, patiently accumulated potential is finally unleashed. Before we unveil the mechanics of the decisive blow, the strike not against a human adversary, but against adversity itself, ensure that your commitment to this path is absolute. Subscribe and activate your notifications, for this final, most potent piece of ancient knowledge is reserved only for those who have demonstrated the focus and discipline to follow the path to its ultimate conclusion. This is the grand culmination of all your training, the singular moment where years of silent preparation crystallize into an immediate, unassailable, and enduring victory. The moment of tectonic fracture inevitably arrives. It does not solicit your opinion nor await your convenience. It is a rupture in the fabric of the expected, a sudden and violent reordering of your reality. For the individual who has lived a life of passive hope, this moment is the apocalypse. A sudden market collapse is not a statistical event. It is the deafening sound of a meticulously constructed future shattering into a million pieces. The unexpected loss of a primary income source is not a logistical challenge. It is a profound and personal judgment, a tidal wave of shame and terror that completely submerges reason. A severe health diagnosis is not a battle to be fought. It is perceived as a final, cruel whisper from an indifferent universe. His world descends into a chaotic spiral of failure because its stability was always a fragile illusion, entirely contingent on the perpetual absence of pressure. In this crucible, his own mind becomes the arch-traitor. Panic, the saboteur within, throws open the gates to the citadel, inviting in despair and confusion. Desperation, a blind guide, shoves him toward foolish gambles and false prophets, promising impossible salvation. His vital energy is not consumed by the act of solving the problem, but is instead incinerated by the immense friction of his own internal chaos. He is a man waging a war on two fronts simultaneously, against the external crisis and against the violent mutiny erupting within his own soul. He is guaranteed to lose both. This is the inescapable destiny of the reactive mind. For the architect of his own resilience, however, this very same moment is perceived through a radically different lens. It is not the terrifying beginning of the war. It is the war's final and most elegant conclusion. It is the singular event for which all other moments were merely a dress rehearsal. The arrival of the crisis is the perfect instantiation of Sun Tzu's timeless analogy, the well-timed swoop of a falcon which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. Here the victim is not a living creature, but the crisis's fundamental potential to inflict chaos and paralysis. The strike is not a violent, aggressive action, but the seamless, instantaneous, and almost silent activation of meticulously engineered countermeasures. When the financial markets convulse, the strategist does not feel the icy grip of fear. He executes a pre-designed and rigorously tested financial protocol. He calmly draws upon the deep reservoirs of emergency capital that were established for this exact type of contingency. He rebalances his diversified portfolio of assets according to a set of logical rules, not the screaming headlines of the day. There is no emotional turmoil, only the dispassionate execution of a process. When his professional path is obstructed or obliterated, he does not despair. He deploys the formidable arsenal of diverse and valuable skills he has been patiently, deliberately acquiring in the margins of his days. His extensive network, cultivated not with transactional greed but with genuine contribution and respect, transforms into a powerful web of real-time intelligence and emergent opportunity. His response is swift, precise, and devastatingly effective to any outside observer, but to him, it is simply the logical, inevitable outcome of his preparations. The profound thinking was completed months, even years, prior. The quality of this decision, this falcon strike, is defined by its breathtaking speed and its apparent effortlessness. It is an effect that appears almost supernatural to the unprepared, but is, in reality, merely the logical and kinetic expression of accumulated potential energy. He moves with the serene confidence of a master surgeon, whose hands perform a life-saving procedure from years of ingrained muscle memory, a powerful testament to a decade of unseen practice. He does not rise to the occasion. He lowers himself to the bedrock of his training. After the decisive blow has landed and the immediate tempest has subsided, the true and lasting nature of strategic victory is finally revealed. The strategist does not engage in celebration. Grand festivities and displays of relief are the domain of those who are surprised and perhaps even relieved by their own success. For the strategist, this triumphant outcome was the only logical result of a correctly formulated and executed plan. The aftermath, therefore, is not a time for rest or self-congratulation, but for quiet consolidation and rigorous analysis. While the unprepared are still sifting through the emotional and logistical wreckage of their lives, attempting to rebuild a fragile existence from a foundation of scorched earth, the strategist is already standing on the new, higher and more fortified ground that his actions have secured for him. He immediately conducts a dispassionate after-action report, a clinical autopsy of the event. Which of his pre-planned systems worked flawlessly under maximum stress? Which of his defenses bent, and at what specific pressure points? What new, previously unseen vulnerabilities did the unique nature of this crisis reveal? The event has not simply been endured. It has been completely metabolized, transformed from a kinetic threat into invaluable, actionable intelligence. This new data is immediately integrated back into his overarching strategy, and the endless process of refinement and fortification begins anew, but this time from a superior position of strength and experience. The peace he secures is therefore not a static, fragile condition. It is a dynamic, anti-fragile and ever-evolving state of superior resilience. His reputation, now indelibly solidified by a public and demonstrable display of unbreakability, becomes his most potent, passive deterrent. Future challenges and potential rivals are dissuaded not by overt threats or aggressive posturing, but by the quiet, almost mythic narrative of a person who does not break, a force that seems to bend the very laws of misfortune to its will. Ultimately, we arrive at the final transcendent conclusion of this entire philosophy. The supreme form of power is not found in the ability to command armies, to amass unimaginable fortunes, or to dominate the wills of others. That is a brutish, vulgar, and ultimately fragile form of influence, forever dependent on external validation and force. The truest and most unassailable power is the ability to so thoroughly master oneself and one's own inner reality that external conflict becomes psychologically and strategically irrelevant. It is the power to shape your own consciousness into a sanctuary so profound and an intellect so flawlessly ordered that the ambient chaos of the outer world loses its fundamental ability to inflict harm. You become the immovable mountain that feels the howling wind but is not and cannot be moved by it. You become the abyssal deep ocean, whose turbulent surface may be battered and churned by the most violent of tempests, but whose immense, silent depths remain in a state of perfect, eternal, and undisturbed calm. The ultimate throne of power is not a gilded chair in a terrestrial palace, but a state of being that no one can threaten, a peace so absolute that no event can shatter it. This is the final paradoxical lesson. The entire purpose of preparing for war is not to become a peerless warrior, but to create a peace so profound and so resilient that you finally earn the right to lay your armor down for good.